So now we're going to do a quick raise of hand. Raise your hand if you used AI like ChatGPT, Harvey, or CoCounsel in your legal workflow process in the last 30 days. Now, keep your hand up if your organization actually encourages that usage. Now, keep your hands up if you use professional-grade legal AI tools. Okay, what are those tools? Okay. Got it. Got it. So that's exactly why we're here today, so that we can learn a little bit more about the tools that are actually being implemented beyond the pilot phase, in addition to some of the workflow processes that we were actually seeing. So a quick thank you to our sponsors, PAR, Practice Line Resources, which actually helps bring legal professionals to the table, helping with law firms as well as legal ops, and then Platform, which is a strategic communications firm, which is my firm. So on that note, let's get started. And wanted to introduce you to Stacie Morris, the founder and principal of Lumen Advisory Group. And for those who are curious why we look alike, we're actually twins. So she will be introducing the panel today.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Actually, I'm going to pass this over to the panel itself as we get started. So as Valerie had said, we're here tonight because we wanted to explore a deceptively simple question: how is AI reshaping the legal industry? So we'll explore what's happening on the ground, where clients are demanding outcomes, and legal leaders in legal tech, in-house legal ops, and former partners from law firms are facing real trade-offs around risk, ROI, as well as reinvention. Some say the moment feels like the early days of the internet, and even when electricity got started, and we are just in the first inning. But the data reveals a more complex story of two different industries with two different speeds. We see 81% of in-house counsels are now using AI for legal work, compared to only 55% for law firms. So what's real? That's what tonight is about. This panel actually grew out of a conversation over donuts, as one does, while drafting our recent white paper, From Hours to Outcomes, and that research surfaced one central theme. The future of legal is about restructuring how value gets created. And so we brought together a group of leaders who are living this shift day to day. And the conversation is amongst peers. All of us have kind of worked together in some capacity, and they're in the thick of the transformation day to day. So by the end of this panel, we'd love to have you leave with a clear-eyed understanding of what really is going on the ground, what's actually working, and take concrete ideas so that you can take it in your day-to-day lives. So then let's go ahead and let's dive in. I'll let each of the panelists introduce themselves and share what's top of mind during this moment of rapid change. Doug?
Great, thanks, Stacie, and thanks for the invite to be on this great panel. So Doug Luftman, co-founder and co-CEO of Velocity Edge Advisors. We're a modular, on-demand legal department and HR department solution. So think of it as fraction GCs, basically turnkey solution for legal departments for tech companies. We embrace basically every legal tech technology that we can, obviously to leverage it, because we have very seasoned professionals, so we can kind of look at and see whether hallucinations are an issue and the like, and really just leverage cutting edge and know where we need to go with it, and then engage with companies of all ilk that are basically cutting edge technology companies that embrace their own cutting edge technologies as well. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks.
My name is Daniel Lewis. I lead LegalOn. We're a legal AI for in-house teams platform with deep expertise in areas like contract review and legal front doors, matter management. Prior to this, I was at LexisNexis for about 5 years, leading businesses there, including practical guidance, and joined Lexis when they had acquired my first company, which was a startup called Ravel Law that built legal research and analytics tools. Lawyer by training, would have been in legal tech now for quite a while.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. There's so many people from around the world here, so thank you for joining us today and being here in the beautiful city of San Francisco. My name is Lydia Flocchini. I am a legal tech go-to-market advisor. I help legal tech founders, mainly lawyer founders, build and scale their company from the ground up. I have been in the legal tech space for over 30 years. I'm very fortunate that I've been part of teams that have built category-defining companies, from launching the next generation of legal research, to creating legal analytics for the law, to developing financial and practice management systems for law firms, as well as modern e-discovery tools. So my point of view is one from being a former operator, but now being able to work with founders as they are building their products in the age of AI. Thank you.
I'm Sarah Starr. I'm Director of Legal Operations at Generate Capital. It's a leading investment firm for renewable technologies. What I'm top of mind, I think that was the second part of the question. I guess, obviously you're all here for AI, and I guess from top of mind for me is that how do we operationalize AI? It's great to have tools. We all know about tools. We're all in the Bay Area. We're saturated. But how do we actually implement them into our work? And so I'm glad you're all here today to hear from us and to hear from the rest of the panel.
Perfect. Well, okay, so let's get started. Given that it's SF Tech Week, let's start with the tech. So Daniel, congratulations on the partnership with OpenAI for the launch of Agent Kit. Can you tell us more about it and what it means for the industry?
Yeah, so just yesterday, OpenAI launched a new toolkit called Agent Kit with several different features for building new agents. LegalOn was featured as part of that launch, which we're pleased by. By way of context, we've been working with OpenAI for several years now, since the early days of ChatGPT. And we continue to benchmark it against other technologies, and we've consistently found that it's the best model for our specific use cases of things like contract review and redlining documents, things like that. So we think they're a great technology provider, and we're excited to be working with them. Agent Kit in particular, I think, is a further reflection of we're still very much in the early days of this technology, though. For example, part of the toolkit is a chat user interface that makes it easier for companies to build chat UIs on top of LLMs rather than having to build from scratch. Sounds simple, it is kind of simple, but it makes a ton of sense, right? And so to me, I think the way that I reflect on this is the way that we're doing internal software development at LegalOn is continuing to shift quite rapidly. The way that software development happens is changing pretty quickly, hopefully leading to faster velocities of building products. But it also then translates into it's ever easier to build new startups, build new products that potentially have legal applications. But it's not going to, that doesn't mean that you get to build great companies overnight. The speed of software development does not translate into you've successfully built a great company that's delivering amazing value. It's almost easier than ever to build fast prototypes, but in some ways it's just as hard as ever to build enduring companies that have deep strengths and that are deeply tuned for legal use cases. So I think both things are exciting. There's still opportunities to build great companies, and the technology that we get to build with is advancing quite quickly.
About the velocity as well as use cases, but the question is about enduring companies. What are some of the characteristics of emerging winners?
It's hard to say with any sort of crystal ball about what's going on out there, but I do think there's obviously several things are true. One is that the categories that have separated companies traditionally, many of those are dissolving. Because AI has made it possible to flex into other spaces, and it's made it obvious and sort of compelling that you need to do that and want to do that to better serve your users. The things that you could use to build sort of very specific point solutions around, now it makes much more sense to also do that and start to do some adjacent spaces. There's a ton of companies that are getting started and funded today. Obviously, brand is more important than ever in terms of building awareness. With so many companies for people to learn about, being top of mind is very critical. So I think like the strategy for navigating how do you differentiate, how do you build companies that have a significant moat and a differentiation, and how you do that in a way where you're building brand alongside it, those two feel like very critical at this moment.
Perfect. So building brand, but also adjacent categories. Doug, you've just started your own firm, Velocity. Do you want to tell us what you see with respect to what feels different about the AI cycle, as well as characteristics of emerging winners?
Sure. I agree with what Daniel said, is that brand is definitely important. I think in addition to that, what I have been observing is I remember the days of document management systems, billing systems, and all these very rudimentary things where we were all like, this is great, but it's just slowly evolving. AI feels very different, is that it feels like that it's accelerating much quicker than any other type of technology that we've seen in the past. And so we're just very excited about where that's heading.
Perfect. Okay, let's then deep dive into client pain points, because I know that's where the pressure is the loudest. And the end client, the GCs, are telling us that they don't want more tools, that they don't want more time tracking, but instead they want lower bills, better work product, more thoughtful services, where law firms are actually partnering, such as with Sherman investing in some legal tech or new pricing models. And we also see that 58% of GCs say they plan to reduce their reliance on outside counsel as they bring more capabilities in-house with AI. But law firms and legal vendors are still largely operating on legacy models. So, Sarah, from your vantage point as an in-house operator, what are those biggest client pain points? You're living them day in and day out, and how should firms and legal tech vendors respond?
Yeah, so I think, I'm an in-house operator, right? So a little bit different than other folks on the stage. And really what we're feeling from our GC is, what is the impact you're making to the broader organization goals? That's kind of the message you're hearing from everybody all the time. Efficiency is great, all of those items that ChatGPT and other AI solutions will give you, but how do you actually measure that? And what is the impact to the things that you're driving? So it's doing less with less resources. My company just had a RIF, unfortunately. It's out there in the news, so I can talk about it. But we're being asked right now to look at our resources and to see what we can do with that. And that's looking at AI a lot, to say, okay, we have less people. How do we actually implement AI to solve this pain point of doing more with less, or doing the same with less, because it's the same amount of work? And then making sure that you're able to demonstrate the impact. And that's really integrating not just the quantitative information you can take from the implementation of AI, but also the qualitative. And then putting that together from a systems perspective, so you can demonstrate to the finance team, this is how we impacted your KPI, right? This is a KPI of the company, and launching onto that. So that's what I'm hearing from my general counsel. That's how we need to move the ball forward for legal teams with in-house.
Sure. So I think of pain very in a unique way, because I think that efficiency and reward is not pain when you're building legal research or legal AI products. Pain is when there is a serious detrimental financial impact that you're trying to solve and change. And so I'll give you examples of that. GCs that I have talked to, who they're being asked, we're looking at merger acquisition. We need an assessment right away. Should we go look at this company? They reach out to outside counsel. It's going to take 2 weeks, and they lose the deal because of that. That's real pain. So if your AI can help that GC or even PEVC be able to accelerate that process and have foresight and unlock insight in a way that they hadn't had before, you're solving that pain. So when the legal techs that I'm working with, I will say that we focus a lot on pain, deeply understanding the customer problem, which means talking to customers, which means being out literally trying to uncover that very deep pain that I've been talking about, because if you do, then you'll understand the ROI that behind that. So customer stories, creating customer innovation teams, I think that's critical. To your first question, it's actually a differentiator in building an enduring company, is if you put your customer at the center of everything you do, you are actually putting your product out there, go to market in their voice. And I will say just one other thing with ROI, and this is the thing I think about all the time, is ROI has many various forms. The most important ROI, though, is transformational ROI. When you actually look at the infrastructure and create a new, entirely new system or way of doing things. And if your company can do that, those are the companies that are going to win in this legal AI race, I will say, and actually lead and not compete. So just a little bit on ROI there, and pain.
You're living this day in and day out, working with both legal counsel, law, as well as law firms. What's your take on this?
Yeah, I think it goes back to, something, Sarah, you mentioned before with regard to, I'm representing as fractional general counsel a bunch of different tech companies, and we come in and we're kind of a turnkey solution of instantaneously creating a legal department. So the expectation is, with the instantaneous creation of a legal department, that you're also going to have the legal tech tools, you're going to be able to bring answers to market very, very quickly and get up to speed very quickly. So I do think that that is the dynamic, is that what AI has done, back to that kind of acceleration path, is with all these other legal tech tools, it took so long for things to get to a point that basically there were results, or at least progress. With AI, within a year, we've seen a very dramatic change. And so I think everyone in the industry is expecting you to be able to give instantaneous answers. And so the key is being able to know how good are these tools and how accurate these tools are, and being able to very quickly, to avoid losing a deal, to be able to say, look, I'm giving you a very much off-the-cuff answer, using potentially AI to maybe investigate some things to validate what you think is the answer, and get a level of confidence that you can come in and really advise a CEO or a COO or an engineer as to how to proceed forward.
Glad you disclosed, Sarah. Disclose. Make sure you say, I'm using AI.
Yeah. Okay, but let's go into like hype versus reality. I mean, is this really working? We see that while legal AI is everywhere in the headlines, most law firms and legal departments are still in pilots, even though they're using AI in other workflows. From your vantage point, then, what's the hype and what's actually creating measurable value today? I'd probably go Doug and then Sarah.
I think it depends how sophisticated counsel is that you're talking to. I think in-house counsel has always been ahead of the game with regard to understanding the tech. And I think law firms are still exploring things and still trying to embrace it as well. And I think there's also the headwinds of the structure of law firms is very, very different than a company. A GC can just say, do it, and you're able to do it. Management committee or a tech committee can say, do it, and then you've got to convince 30, 50, 100 attorneys, if not more, to do something and align. So I do think that there's a lot of hype out there from the standpoint of that you can instantaneously turn something on and it works. But I also think that the reality is that there are a lot of people that are doing some really interesting dynamic stuff already because they're familiar with the technology and they're embracing it and they're understanding the nuances of it. I think where you hear a lot of the hype are those that are really struggling to first understand it and using it before they understand how to use it. And you hear the horror stories of, people citing, fabricated cases in briefs, which they shouldn't have cut corners. They should know what the limitations are. And I think that's where the dynamic is knowing what is real versus what is potentially still exploratory. I mean, I still think we're in the first inning of AI with regard to how it's evolving.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of hype, and obviously that's why people are here today, right? It's very exciting times, but I think that there's a lot of hype and there's a lot of nuance in the applications of AI. And so it does some things really well, like redlining we talked about, analytics, contract analytics, that does really well, but it's really bad at formatting, like simple things that you think it could do well. And so there is a lot of hype, but I think we haven't fully figured out how to integrate it into our existing workflows and processes. And that's where we're looking to other folks and to other companies to figure out, okay, how do we actually embed this into our current work? Is it going to be transformative? Or we're going to completely just break the model? Or are we integrating it? And I think we're at that inflection point where even for myself, I'm like, great, ChatGPT is great, but how do you integrate it into a workflow? I don't know. So I think, that's really part of where the hype misses it, is that there is a lot of nuance and context that you need for your use cases, as well as how you integrate that into your work. So, but I'm still excited about AI.
Very cool. And so, Daniel, I don't necessarily want to put you on the spot. Given where Sarah was at with respect to that decision point, how do you handle that at Legal On?
I agree with both, which is that there's definitely a lot of hype and there's some really serious, powerful use cases already. And both of those things can be true. I think if you think about the last 3 years, you saw small businesses, small law firms move the fastest, right, in year one. In year two, those folks were still moving, but you started to see some medium-sized businesses start to move. And in year three now, here we are, you finally are starting to see some large enterprises move. like there's kind of an exception that took place, which is a lot of large law firms announce things in year one. And I think results are kind of mixed across the board. Like some places are getting great value and some places are maybe underwhelmed. But there's really a big gap between, like, going back to the conversation about ROI. ROI in a law firm is very different than ROI in a business. ROI in a law firm is not about saving time. Saving time is costing you money. It's very difficult to draw a straight line between like ROI of software that's fast and efficient and like law firms' bottom line profit motive. In a business, it's very clear and aligned. It's like legal teams that move faster, do faster turnarounds, can do more with less. Like it's a clear win and it's super obvious ROI. So I think the motivations of how organizations are moving and adapting and like what success looks like for them changes a lot depending on whether you're talking about law firms that are on a billable hour or in-house. And I think Doug's point is probably the most important one, which is like we're still very much in the early innings of this. Like, yes, maybe 80% of people are reporting that they're using Gen AI tools regularly. We're in the very early innings of this though, for sure.
Okay, so that's, I wanted to, oh, go ahead.
I was going to add something really quick, is I think that when we think of time to value in AI, there are segments within the legal industry that are accelerating very fast. We're talking about in-house and large law firms, but when we're seeing small law firms or solo practitioners, legal aid societies, we're seeing some nonprofits where their legal teams are using AI. I think there was a recent article I saw last week, which is saying that adoption is probably the fastest because of limited resources and teams who are using AI. And so I think that there are pockets and areas where we're seeing very rapid adoption. I also think there's technologies that are the time to value is instant, especially if they have a PLG model where someone can just go on and start using the application and immediately start seeing the benefits, providing that confidentiality, privacy, security, and there's ethical considerations. But, and some technologies are just harder to implement and take more process. But I don't believe that you need a pilot all the time. I'm a little bit disruptive in that regard. Yeah.
Okay, so then can you like give me some use cases where you see this in production and working well and fully adopted?
In terms of AI, gosh, there's so many examples. I mean, I could say as an example, I was talking about this earlier, Queries is a legal conversational intelligence tool where an attorney can go and start in a client meeting, understand the issues, see prompts, real-time follow-up. I mean, instant time to value, we see this with some legal aid societies, just partnerships with state bar associations, immediate. I will say in M&A technology where M&A attorneys or VCs, PEs are immediately, they've got a deal, upload all of the deal docs into a vault, automatically rename it, and are able to understand all of the risks, liabilities. I mean, it's amazing, right? These are things that would take hours to what we were saying to do, and now it's immediate. Legal on, to the technology and the ability to understand and analyze contracts and do all of that work. I mean, Sarah is, deeply involved in that is extraordinary. So I'll pass it to Sarah to give some.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have some really good, the ones for me that are actually going to be better examples might not even just be Gen AI. It's kind of that analytics, I think, is where I've seen AI be really, really strong and when our company invaluable. So e-billing solution platform, that's been a big success for us. And think about it. It's been trained on data from law firms for 10 years. And now we're using it to help us reduce our legal spend by catching errors in billing. That's a really easy use case to like demonstrate ROI on, right? Things such as, ChatGPT and integrating that into your work is harder to show and demonstrate the impact that it has. But I think back to kind of what Lydia was saying earlier is like, that's where the transformation is going to happen. Those things that we're trying to figure out is where we're going to actually transform the actual way we work and get the most ROI out of it. But I mean, contract analytics has been just, we just sold a whole set of portfolio assets, I think over 100 distributed assets. So it's 100 solar facilities installed on top of different rooftops. And we use a combination of Glean and ChatGPT in order to help us dive and not send it out to a outside counsel to do our own diligence and look through our contract sets to do a scheduling. Normally you'd have to send that out to outside counsel, spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars for a junior attorney, maybe a paralegal to do the scheduling. And we're really easily able to show, hey, we have these tools, and we were able to take that and apply it to our use case here of this sale, and we're able to reduce a whole bunch of billable hours that would have been attributed to that deal, making that deal overall a better success. So, yeah.
Great. Then let's get to renewals then. I mean, just because people have been through pilots, right? And legal tech vendors are now in this virtuous cycle of renewals of the land expand motion, right? So in that case, are you also creating business cases for that renewal?
Yes, yeah. No, I mean, the business cases, that's the strongest thing, for an in-house person. Again, this is, people will be selling to myself. I really need my vendors to understand what my business is, right? I think that Lydia talked about it before, right? Somebody recently came to me and was like, you got to buy this e-discovery tool. I'm like, we don't really do a lot of litigation. I'm glad he has AI in it, and that looks really cool, and maybe I'll do litigation later. But really focusing in on, what are the use cases across the organization? Where are the pain points in the other departments? We don't have a procurement department. So looking at, okay, how can in legal, from a contracting standpoint, create a business use case around implementing some kind of AI function within our contracting to help the other teams within our organization? Hopefully that directly answers your question. I'm not quite sure.
Definitely. No, it definitely does. And Daniel, I'd be curious to see about how your clients are making use cases. Business cases for renewal of your technology.
Sure. So, we're still only a few years in, right? So companies that signed up for annual contracts, they've only gone through one renewal cycle yet. I wouldn't say that we're seeing dramatically different behaviors than we did with traditional software. But I do think one realization that folks have is that transforming how they do something like contracts doesn't change overnight, right? It does take some adjustment to figure out how do you work this into your processes in a way that makes you ultimately, 80% faster. And you can get those sorts of results. You really can. But people across an organization, if you have 100 attorneys in an organization, there's going to be 10 who are very tech fluent and early adopters, and you're going to have 20 that are I really don't want to touch the stuff unless you make me. And you're going to have a lot who are in the middle, where it's the train is kind of leaving, and I don't want to miss it, but I don't quite know how to get on it, right? And so that's taking time. People are moving a lot slower than the technology's moving right now. But I think being able for folks to get in, not expect that overnight they're going to get dramatically better results, but what are they looking for, and are they setting realistic expectations 3 months in, 6 months in, a year in, so that when that renewal comes around, whenever it is, they're able to talk about, oh yeah, this sped up our deal cycles by X%. This helped us increase our consistency across the team, so that when somebody went out on paternity leave, it was no problem to cover it, right? These are some of the classic things that AI is now delivering value around, and maybe new ways of talking about ROI.
Very cool. Well, thank you. Moving on to business model reinvention, because we've talked about how do you go ahead and reimagine workflows, for example. Let's talk about reimagining the business. Technology just doesn't speed up the way we work, but it changes how we actually charge for us. And we were talking about incentives, or kind of misaligned incentives. And that brings up the race to zero fallacy mentioned in the white paper, the fear that efficiency destroys revenue. And AI is surfacing deep structural questions about how legal services are priced, staffed, and delivered. We talked a little bit about that too. So all of that to say, it opens new models, flat fees, subscriptions, as well as productized services. How do we encourage law firms to think about it, as well as think beyond the billable hour? Doug?
Sure. So a couple things I think that we said, I'll try to kind of integrate into this. One was, I think, the billable hour concept has, for the longest time, remember the days of the GC of Cisco saying, billable hour is dead, he's going to force, law firms continually decrease 10% every year, decrease. And it just hasn't happened the way that we had hoped it would. And I think the reason is because there is a shift going on now, which we had hoped earlier, which is going to result-based kind of billing. As a general counsel, I don't care how many hours you bill. I don't care what your billing rate is. All I want to know is I need to get this specific thing done, and I know it generally costs this much to get it done. And my hope is over time, as you build expertise in that area, that it'll actually decrease the amount of time and expense it's going to take going forward. And I think that's where kind of the Gen AI type of environment comes in. I mean, I think you mentioned before, the general application of application versus specific ones, like let's say contract lifecycle management and the like, was a point solution. And as I think, Stacie, you mentioned earlier today, you said that GCs don't want more tools. I'd probably rephrase it a different way. GCs want more malleable tools that adapt to what you need, and from a renewal standpoint, you want to be able to basically get a renewal that allows you to get something that has agile ability to it. So you're not buying a CLM tool that you want another feature. You want a tool that maybe is CLM today, tomorrow is a workflow intake tool, and the next day it's an analytics tool, and the next day it's something else. And so it's one tool you'd like that has this very broad, generic kind of approach. And I think from the standpoint of the change in business model for law firms, I think law firms in the legal profession have always been information managers, and I don't think we've ever really thought of ourselves that way. We've always thought of ourselves as legal professionals that are elevated to a level that we just do things that are really important. We're information managers. We have knowledge that we basically have that are either part of the attorneys in the firm or built into forms that you've developed and the like, and then you try to quickly access that information and then deliver the results. I think we're getting to a point where law firms are going to have to start looking at their LLMs and their modeling as their value add. That if a key partner leaves, they're leaving based on their business relationships, not because of the knowledge they have, because that knowledge has already been subsumed into the firm and actually is part of this knowledge base that when you engage the firm, you're engaged in the historical knowledge of that firm over years and years. And I think legal departments are the same way, is that the way they differentiate is being able to quickly respond to things, and by building models and building internal tools that I think some people in the audience may have mentioned that they've done in the past, it helps with basically differentiating your legal department from another, because you're able to get things done very, very quickly because you have the context of the business that the company has, the importance, the priority, the risk tolerance the company has, and being able to build it and then agilely refine it over time as the company evolves or the business evolves.
Can I jump in on that too? Yeah, I think like Doug said, the billable hour has been long, like its demise has been long heralded, and it's never happened. And I wouldn't bet my life that it's going away anytime soon either. I expect that like some number of large law firms will continue to do well and will continue to be shocked by what folks are charging on an hourly basis. But somewhat invisibly, what is happening is like more work is being done in-house over time. The delta between paying $2,000 an hour for an outside counsel versus paying essentially $100 an hour for an in-house attorney, like that is just an economic force that you can't argue with. The market is pulling work in-house because why would you pay 20x that, literally? And so folks are scrutinizing, I think, more carefully. At the same time, I do think like I'm skeptical that the largest firms are going to be the ones that reinvent this space. I think you are starting to see green shoots of startups and tech-enabled services. Tech-enabled services, again, like folks may be familiar with a company called Atrium that essentially like nuked the tech-enabled space 5 years ago. And for several years, you could not fund a business that was tech-enabled legal. It's good to see that re-emerging. So I think there's like definitely interesting things that are coming up, but it's a little bit too soon to say. It definitely has not shifted the economics of large law firms today. I think many of them are still doing quite well.
I'm going to add, yeah, this is like we're all very passionate about this because I was talking about this in like 2011 when we launched the next generation of legal research. And just a very quick story, I remember when you were able to search across all of the databases, it actually made you 75% more efficient. There were studies, and I remember just down the street talked to one of the managing partners of a law firm, and we were talking about this. He said, "Lydia, I don't know, we're not going to be able to bill as much." And I said, "I don't think your client's going to like that." I knew him well enough that I could kind of, be a bit facetious, but I will say this is still very alive, very real, and it's because when you think about it, they're antithetical to one another. That speed, that velocity to this billable hours. So the way I think about it and what I share when I'm out, trying to explain how we create change is first, we got to reject the premise. We absolutely need to think of what can we change that is different. And so someone said to me, well, what do we do with all the time that AI saves? Oh, there's a lot of things. Create new business development teams, redeploy them, new competitive intelligence teams. We saw this shift when analytics, which both Daniel and I worked on, the way it transformed internal teams and processes. There is a treasure trove of data in firms' financial and practice management systems. There are practice areas that are not doing well that could use an infusion of new strategy. You could use AI on those cases or on those matters. You can use the time to mentor, coach, and create a culture that is going to help advance your firm into the future. There are very serious issues in the legal industry, as we all know, when it comes to mental health, culture, and so there's a lot that can be done. It's just thinking differently about how you redeploy that. And there's tremendous opportunity. So anyway, some thoughts there.
As you can tell, we're all really passionate about the billable hour here. And I want to bring it back to what is practicing law versus what's not practicing law. I think, I am a non-attorney, paralegal background. I wanted to go to law school. And, I saw this map back in the day. It was showing the growth of the legal sector like this infinitely. And in the end, they were like, here's the attorneys and here's everybody else. And what that means is that for me, and as an in-house person, is that I'm not even looking on taking that work in-house necessarily in the legal department. I'm looking to deflect the work, if that makes sense. So I'm taking that risk kind of tolerance and working with your GC to say, hey, this work doesn't even need to come to legal. We have AI now. We have a risk tolerance. We have a predefined set. It meets 80%. It goes through without legal review. It doesn't even need to be negotiated, which is where I want to go from an AI perspective. I want to go, just don't look at it. I think there was this concept of the one NDA, where everybody's going to agree to one kind of form of NDA, and so we can just transact better and faster. And so that's where I'm looking at. It's not even just how are that, outside counsel using it, which is another question, but really looking, okay, how can we use it internally, again, with less resources from my legal team right now, because my legal team got cut in half, to deflect the work, to enable the organization to do legal work, which doesn't have to be done by an attorney.
Perfect. Well, I think that we could go on and on about this because there's so much to say. So last question, if you can do a one sentence each before we open it up to questions. What is the one key takeaway that you would want to leave with the audience?
This is from in-house. Is each customer is going to be very nuanced, right? I think each use case, and so make sure you do research on what it is that you're trying to solve for. Be very specific on it. Know that a one-size-fits-all is not how it works, and things have to be piloted. I think I've had some really large AI legal tech vendors say, here's a demonstration, here's a demo. I'm like, great, can I play with it? No. One size does not fits all. Things need to be piloted, and you really need to listen to the customer and what the customer is trying to solve for.
I'm going to say, before even looking at any AI tool, you have to understand what are the problems within your own organization, the challenges you're facing, so that you can address those. Because if you start with product first and then try to fit in a solution, it's going to be an uphill battle to be successful, as well as to drive the change management that you need to. So I always say start with the problem first, so that you are really trying to see how do we change what we're doing and transform it. Even before, because there's many solutions out there, but the one that is going to be the right one is the one that's going to be made for, really to address what you're trying to do.
So my takeaway would be, if you're familiar with Moore's Law, you know that traditionally for the last 50 plus years, the capabilities of chips has essentially doubled every 2 years, right? And some folks have noticed that LLMs are advancing at that same pace, if not more quickly. So 10 years from now, LLMs might be 32 times better than they are today. Just wrap your head around that. The amount of change we're going to see in the next 10 years is a lot more than we saw in the last 10 years.
I'm going to first start with dating myself and then hopefully give a little gem. What I would love to see is, I remember when I was at an undergrad at UCLA and I saw Mosaic for the first time. For those of you who don't remember, Mosaic was the predecessor to basically the modern browser. And that first time you turned it on and you actually saw a graphical interface of the internet was like, wow. And I think with AI and these tools, you want that same element, which I don't think we've seen to date. And I do worry that the hype is going to potentially, hopefully not have another Atrium incident, which was overpromising the next generation high-tech firm, which just failed miserably because it just wasn't what they promised to be. So what I've seen outside the legal space is I've seen Granola AI, amazing AI transcription tool. Just full disclosure, I represent him as fractional general counsel, but amazing tool. Alma, it's a nutrition app that reads your mind, that if you want to eat more healthy, you put it in and it just tells you, and you can kind of communicate with it as to how am I doing with my, my eating. Of course, mine says, you're eating too much junk food, cut it back. I think we want to see that same thing in the legal space, is something where you just, when you turn it on and you use it, it just works and it just wows you. And I think we're maybe a year away from seeing that. I feel like we're at kind of the, again, early stages, but I think in the next year we're going to see some really, really exciting stuff. And look to all of you that are vendors to create some pretty cool things, and you got a commitment from me that I will be the first to beta your stuff and dig into it.
Thank you. So with that, I'd love to go ahead and open it up to the floor. I mean, we've heard a lot about voice of the customer. We've heard about like the wow. So let's go ahead and see whether or not we have any questions.
I think I just want to have some of my comments. I'm an attorney. I run a law firm for more than 16 years. So recently I have like one hybrid law firm, like you mentioned, Atrium. We just do immigration law. So that's the reason I have like both angles are running a software company and also running a law firm. Sometimes you're thinking when you're in-house, you pay attorney, you're thinking we pay hourly rate. But in fact, when we attorney deliver the service, the money we charge is not only the time the attorney delivered for that time period. Because when you pay money to attorney, it means there's like a guarantee, which means your work will be done by a reasonable, competent attorney to perform the work. And also, if the work was done mess up, which means all we attorney will have more practice insurance. If anything wrong, you maybe only pay us a few $1,000s. We're going to end up like, guarantee pay you back like a few $1 million. That's the reason I want to think is like, this is like one thing why the industry cannot really be defined by doing the work, quickly solve everything. So I think right now when we have the software, there's two ways. One way is people thinking, hey, we want to replace the attorney, we want to use AI to replace the attorney. In that case, which means people maybe get some work quick, everything as well, but no one give you this kind of guarantee. You lose the guarantee. No one is going to pay something massive. No one going to pay you back a few $1 million. No one doing that. No one can guarantee a reasonable attorney handle the work is one thing. When we deal with the consumer, when do have a lot of AI tech, kind of mentioned I want to replace the attorney. But for me, it's like when I do the AI tech, I'm more thinking about how can we make attorneys work, like, try to empower the attorney. So I really don't think it's like when the technology gets quicker, maybe you can make the deliver the legal work can be much faster. But I don't really thinking you can reduce time to the limits, because I think that why in my mind, what kind of attorney cannot be replaced by AI? I do foresee like AI can replace all the transaction work, because right now AI have a large language model. They can learn much more in the legal way, transaction, contract, everything as well, have more data. But I do feel like we attorney, we still have some things like we have our insight. For example, I compare myself as well. When I write a legal brief, I use some AI write a legal brief. Come on, my legal brief is like, I would say like 20, 30 times better than whatever AI write it. So when we are attorney, we do have something cannot be replaced by the AI. It's like our insight, our hands-on experience. For example, we handle so many volume case. All this information is confidential. No large language model can grab our data. They cannot, because that's all the private information. And also another thing I was thinking is like, with the AI technology, it do help our attorney can spend less time deliver the legal product. But I do think it's like we attorneys should spend more time to do the communication with clients. Because like the largest complaint is like attorney don't communicate with the clients. So that's what I'm kind of thinking, it just really changed the way how we attorney work instead of like, yeah.
Lucy, those are great points. And I will say, one thing we didn't address was a shift towards outcome-based, value-based pricing, right? Looking at outcomes, and this is when I was referencing the shifts that we're seeing with solos, small law firms, mid-sized practitioners who do use those models. I mean, it is very interesting to see how they're shifting the work to higher value work, more with their clients, being able to focus on the strategy. I think AI is a force multiplier to the attorney, right? So I don't think AI will replace attorneys. I think AI will replace attorneys who don't use AI. So that it will be attorneys who use AI will replace those that don't. So that's the key. But anyway.
Everybody's going to be using AI constantly, inextricably in their work a few years from now. So I'm not loving the phrase of like lawyers who use AI will replace, because everybody's going to be using it.
One business model that we've actually been exploring is subscription-based services. Again, back to this turnkey solution. We go into a company and say, hey, look, you really don't want the billable hour. You really don't want project-based billing. What you really want is either a full-time head, part-time department, whatever it might be. This is basically the amount of money we think it's worth to you. If you agree, we'll deliver it. And at the end, every month, you go, am I delivering that value? If the answer is yes, success. If the answer is no, let's figure out what's not working and proceed forward. So I think that the practice of law, the use of AI technology is really going to head in that direction where AI is going to be an enabler to basically help people to basically deliver the value. The one concern I do have, and I don't think you said this, but it struck me when you said it, is my biggest concern is non-lawyers using legal tech tools to become lawyers. That, I think, is the biggest problematic. And it's not because I want to protect the practice of law. It's that there's an element of it that I have gotten a lot of things coming back to me these days where they're running Gen AI saying, well, the answer is X. And it's like, where are you getting this from? And the amount of time to deprogram them to get them to the right answer is more than probably them having come to us.
Yes, and I will say that has anybody ever used the Big Four or possibly a McKinsey or a Bain? Okay, so I will say that what I have seen traditionally is that instead of implementation partners or even strategic partners, you actually just hire these people to go ahead and feed them your information and your data to get them the stamp of approval at the board level. And then after that, everything comes on through. So you're basically the master puppeteer internally in order to go ahead and make sure that the lawyers, or in this case, McKinsey, is actually providing the right information to turn boards and make decisions. So all of that to say, like, yes, lawyers will have a place. I think the question is where and how. So, okay, next question.
Can I take the opportunity actually to ask a question, and I'm going to pass around? So I was wondering, I imagine a lot of lawyers right now are interested in implementing AI into their day-to-day work, right? But it's not that easy, especially if you have been in practice for a while, and not everybody encountered this in law school, etc. What can be done from the educational perspective to involve more lawyers and to actually make it a little bit more of a liberal market to help more people, essentially, right? To make lawyers more efficient? Okay.
Yeah, no, totally, and I hear you. And you actually, there's actually some really good classes coming up at like UC Berkeley, actually, that on legal operations. There is more education coming around on this. Obviously, I'm kind of at the forefront of that because I work in legal operations, and so it's really important to rely on. Say you don't even have a legal operator like myself in house, relying on different, fraction counsel as well as other services, so that would actually teach and learn you and bring you in. And this is not exclusive to lawyers, right? Everybody's trying to figure out how to use it, right? Education around it is bad for everybody in the workplace. So really, it's getting out there, making sure you have somebody that is tasked with that, right? It might be on top of their day job. I actually have a senior attorney who spent 30 hours on creating custom GPTs. I don't know if I really wanted him to do that, but he went and did it. But it's getting certain people to be, at the forefront of that, and then educating the folks around them, saying, hey, look how great this tool is. Here's the resources that that worked for me. We've also partnered with, I think, law firms. Some law firms are ahead of the game. Oric has an innovation lab. I really love Oric's team, and they are really at the head. And we've done prompt engineering, educational trainings internally. We've also done kind of what is the ethics around all of that. So there is specific classes out there, and there is a lot starting to pop up. It's, again, because it's moving so quickly, we're trying to catch up with it. Like, what is this? How are we going to apply this? And what are the risks? And again, never going to practice law. Attorneys are great. I will always need my attorney. There's times where I'm like, hey, Tuka, you got to take this one. But you know, it's looking at what work should be going there. How do we get the most value out of that? And I agree, back to the subscriptions. I love the subscription model. I do that. We've done flat fees with certain law firms and subscription models with ASLPs too. I think they go really well, and it's been a great partnership. So.
Yeah, they're alternative legal service providers, but they can be registered as alternative.
Two quick thoughts. So one is when LLMs first came out, I sort of went on the record saying I don't think folks should like learn how to become prompt engineers. And I still hold by that. I think it's like the tools will get better. You don't need to become a prompting expert. But I think I did discount that a lot of folks do need to learn the basics. Like when ChatGPT 5 came out, and all of a sudden people realized that there's a difference between a reasoning model and like a fast thinking model. You're like, oh yeah, like people are still coming along. They're like understanding some of the core things here. But I do think there's a bigger mentality shift that needs to take place in legal, which is investing in systems that scale. I think about this in the contracting space. We have, individual lawyers might say, well, I'm really good at reviewing NDAs and master services agreements, and I can do that all day super fast. Why would I learn how to use technology with this? Well, the reason that you would learn to use technology and build a playbook so that technology can do this for you is so that your whole team can do this. So your business can do this 1,000 times a year without you having to be there. Like that is so much more valuable for your business to be able to review contracts rather than you being the sole expert. And that just requires investing in systems and thinking like, how do I scale what I'm doing by investing a little bit of time in learning how to do this thing and then building a system around it. So I think lawyers are very often not great systems thinkers, and they're focused just on the next thing, the next thing, the next thing.
I was going to add one quick thing. Yeah, earlier this year, I predicted there was this sort of a thought that in the age of AI, customer success would not be as relevant, or because the AI is so easy to use. And I actually predicted and said, I don't think that. If anything, I think it's going to be the most important role post-sales to ensure that adoption, that enablement, and that a real deep understanding of how the impact of AI is. And if you look at articles over the last week, we're starting to see that between subject matter experts, front deployed engineer, and really the hard work starts when that contract is signed. Because if you churn and your client does not renew, NRR is a sign of a company health. So I think that education is critical to all of this, and not only for the organization, but the providers to have the systems, the processes, and the technology in place to enable their customers to be successful. Because if your customer is successful, then it really reflects on your company. So I'm a big believer of that and putting that infrastructure in place.
Just one other quick point. I think it was, they were asking about education and lawyers. I'm really encouraged that we live in the Bay Area. Because again, I don't know the visibility everybody has, but UC San Francisco Law, if I got it right, it used to be Hastings, right? Legal ops program, amazing, and they're doing spectacular things there. So if you're looking to plug into areas, that's one. UC Berkeley. What I love about it is when you talk to undergrads, they talk about they're working with the law school when we're talking about AI. I literally was listening to a panel last weekend where they were talking about next generation AI, and the law school's engaged with them on a regular basis. And then in addition to that, they have the executive program where you can get it if you're a business person. GW Law, my alma mater, just set up a tech and law center, partnering with Berkeley and others. Desperately looking to plug in their students into legal tech companies and other companies to give them experience. And so again, if you're looking free labor, talk to me, happy to make the introduction. And so I am kind of encouraged that I do think that in some respects, the law generally is slow to adapt. I am encouraged that I am seeing, at least in the Bay Area, and Stanford, let me not forget Stanford is the head of the Berkeley program, is now over at Stanford. He's going to do spectacular things, and I think it's starting to ramp up. So, I mean, where else could you be in the country where you're seeing law and AI and technology all embracing? So anyway, just a little pitch for.
I'm going to give a shout out to the University of San Francisco School of Law, which is my alma mater, but I'm also an advisor to the Center for Law, Tech, and Social Good, which is the first school to embed Gen AI in the core curriculum. And recently did a partnership with Anthropic as well as a few other companies. So it's amazing to see what's happening, and actually now it's embedded. This isn't just sort of we're going to, classes or discussions. I mean, this is the future. And not just that, it's the future of creating responsible, ethical attorneys who understand how to use the technology.
I think we covered a gamut of information across B2B and B2C. B2C, I think of it as more the universities and how that education is changing, as well as potentially also all the ontologies that are coming out, free to make legal accessible to the common public. Because legal is not a big secret. It's a few keywords and everything else is boilerplate. So you can create a lot of ontologies. And I've done the research on it. It's just that nobody wants to disrupt the B2B model, which is all about the billable hour. And I've worked in education, I've worked in accounting, I've worked in legal, I've worked in the other space called healthcare, where there were a lot of value-based, but nothing changes because you have one thing as a cost center that you will get fired for, which is if you have one incident that's not in compliance, and the penalties associated with that. And that, until that changes, nobody, the exciting work of AI wants to be the supply chain startup right now. It's the same, or SAP as a system of record. But you try a startup and something goes wrong, God help you save your job. And that's the same thing for general counsels too. So your comments on that, because I kind of like want to split all this out. I can talk about brand marketing. I come from Procter & Gamble, so I can talk about brand marketing where everybody talks about brand recognition, but not about brand equity, which is all about what people qualify as customer success in the tech world, but it's all part of the customer experience. There's no differentiation between sales, marketing, and customer success. It's all one thing because you need brand equity. They need to come back to you.
Hi, I'm Laurie. I'm an AI researcher and engineer from Carnegie Mellon, and I also practiced law for several years. I graduated from NYU Law. So I have a question for Sarah. Actually, two questions. So first one is that, what are something that you wish AI tools can do, but they still cannot do? And also, and my second question is, now that like in-house teams are all embracing AI tools, like how do you value external attorneys right now? Like what kind of works will you outsource to external lawyers? Thank you.
Sure, yeah, no, I think I mentioned it earlier, but the AI is really where it's lacking for me is the integration with other tools and other systems, because it makes it clunky. You know, you're going from one system to another system and jumping around. And I'm kind of a geek. I love integrations, I love systems. And so I think that's where I'm kind of waiting and holding my breath. We talk about a lot in our space that we know consolidation is going to happen here soon. You've already started to see the consolidation into these larger companies. Recently, the legal e-billing platform that I use was consolidated into a larger legal platform company. And so once that starts to happen, you're going to see things that are, I think we talked about before, it's going to do all the things end to end. You're not going to have to leave this legal workflow space because you're going to have, the regulatory compliance check in there. You're going to have the contracting in there. You're going to have the, we talk a lot about is compliance of the contracts after. We talk about compliance broadly. You can think about it in different aspects, but like, how do you look back? And there's some really cool tools showing you like, you have this obligation. And we're going to set a reminder, and it's from the contract, and it's going to be automatic. So end to end, you have the origination of kind of the deal or whatever you're working on, the transaction, and then you have all the other key points of workflows within that. So you don't have to exit that system. And I think that's where AI is lacking for me. It's great, it helps me, but without having that end to end, it's really hard to demonstrate the impact. So, and then for outside counsel, I mean, we're looking at that consistently, like what makes sense, and I think it's not, again, a one size fits all, because it depends on what's in your house at your time. In houses, like in my house, you know, what is fluctuating. My business fluctuates too. Sometimes we have a funds business. The funds business is popping, you know, and that's really highly regulated. And other times it's like, oh, now we're doing a lot of sales over here on the asset management side. So you have to understand which resources you go to for which use cases or for which transactions you're working on. And we're looking at it consistently. And I take an agile methodology to everything that we do anyways, which is I consistently stopping and going, okay, are we on the right path? Is this actually working, or do we need to pivot? And consistently doing that. So that's how I approach using outside counsel.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I think that in the interest of time, 2 quick questions, but not multi-part. Hey guys.
Hi, I'm Yuri, investor based in San Francisco. So, I mean, it makes sense for AI tools to, you know, transform like contract review process or in-house work, because like as Doug mentioned, for a lot of in-house work, a non-attorney can do it, like law clerk or paralegal. But for litigation, for instance, like for e-discovery, I think like it's legally required for a licensed attorney to review documents during its discovery. So I'm just curious how AI-enabled technology can transform litigation space besides doing like drafting memo or doing case law research.
I can,
I can add too. I mean, yeah, and Valerie, I mean, I actually, you know, I worked at Logical, which was a modern e-discovery platform, and I loved everything that the technology did at that time and we were using machine learning, natural language processing in terms of the way we would collaborate with outside and in-house counsel. I really believe AI has caused a renaissance in e-discovery. Like I think it is one of the most exciting, interesting spaces because of what AI can do, from being able to overlay documents and look at visualizations in an instant, being able to, I mean, the attorney is involved, but it's giving them an extraordinary speed, especially when you think of the volume of data and the way it's got to be analyzed, coded, organized. I mean, it's extraordinary. So I think that it's a huge opportunity to create technologies which are just going to define what e-discovery is.
And so I do not have an e-discovery tool, and nor have I ever procured one, but we have other things that are akin to that. And I think to Lydia's point that a lot of information that e-discovery tools or things that are akin to that, like we have a global communications monitoring tool and some other tools that we use that kind of layer over and stopgap solution for e-discovery, is that you start to glean, I'm gonna use Glean because Glean does this too, like other information and other business insights. And I think that's really exciting because when you start to layer on these applications of these new tools from a legal perspective, you're actually enabling the business in other ways, not just from an e-discovery standpoint. Like say you discover something from your e-discovery process that's actually about a financial process that you have or finance profile that you have. You're able to better take that and use that for risk mitigation in the future or for making informed decisions of new transactions. So not directly related to my use of that, but it's something that I see and knowing what e-discovery does and how it can be really like useful in this next phase of AI.
I will say their e-discovery tools have been around for assistant review as part of it. So next-gen AI tools are still, how should I say, they are not as robust as TAR, and they're not accepted by the courts in terms of quality as in terms of accuracy. So people still need to be aware of the types of technology out there that are actually used for e-discovery. That said, there's tools for legal hold, there's tools for compliance, there's tools for data mapping that actually use AI. And for what's actually happening right now are Relativity Fest is actually going on right now, but in Chicago, but AI specifically and what e-discovery is doing and e-discovery tools are doing is that they're going into business systems because they have so many integration points within a company, and they're layering AI with Glean and other technologies to find the insights, the business insights that you otherwise wouldn't find. And so you're finding integrated systems, and going back to even what Daniel's working on, you will see legal workflow being more and more integrated from an interdepartmental level. I would say in the next 5 to 7 years, where because of Glean and other types of tools, they can all integrate, and you can actually plug into the different tools and get BI that you wouldn't otherwise get. So I just wanted to throw that out there. And I know we have one last question, and I know I'm a PR person, but I also was a former attorney. So
Can I ask the last question?
no, you had the last question. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kyle. I practice privacy and IP litigation. So like my question is kind of tied into that. So like, because I kind of work with clients already in tech and they are more receptive using AI tools in-house, and because I do litigation, I guess, like just, I know it's hard to predict the future. You know, like given the large language models or like small language models in-house they're using, when we're talking about brief writing or, you know, strategies for litigation, do you see the models themselves when they already, you know, like reading all the briefs, specifically, let's say, hypothetically client A, they basically put all their previous briefs and motions related to software copyright litigations there. And then they ask this model in the future, like right now or in the future, you know, like apart from generate a template for a specific legal question, do you anticipate the model, given the current development in AI, some kind of a newer strategy, or it will be generating basically something that's derived from the past materials or the materials that have been trained, but not necessarily something brand new strategy for them?
So I think there are a couple things in there. Part that I'll maybe tackle is, I'm going to guess 3 years. You will get that type of implementation, which is you throw a bunch of stuff that basically is from historical litigation, current litigation, into a model, and you'll spit out stuff that will actually really, really help you. It does it now. Yeah. Accuracy, pretty high.
I wanted to thank everybody for joining us today to hear the wonderful conversation that has come out of tonight, and wanted to thank PAR for actually co-sponsoring the event with Platform, and Enterprise Ireland for actually hosting us in this wonderful space. So thank you all. Have a good night.